Boa noite. Good evening, dear all of you, and especially dear Mr. President of the Republic of Portugal. Thank you for your presence. Now for the ultimate endurance test of any European ceremony, the speech of the German. It's not 20 pages, it's not 10 pages, it is 5. I hope you can handle it. It's late in the evening, and I can't rush because I think some of you need translation or don't, maybe not. Then I can be faster. Let's talk. Let's talk, and I need you. I need you to think along. You will notice. We're all such complex beings, all of us. We're social beings in relation to others. Economics and finances are part of that, but also justice, mutual care, our sense of family. We're intellectual and cerebral beings, and we try to think, understand, and classify things and express ourselves verbally. We're emotional beings, and we feel joy and sorrow. We know regrets and hopes, anger and excitement. We are, each of us, full of memories and things we learned, conditioned by our childhood, by history, by what we saw, heard, and felt. We're all conditioned by our languages, the country and culture we grew up in, by our religions, by parents, teachers, friends. In short, we are all the sum of the experiences we made. And all of this, all that we are, in all complexity, right now, is in a huge upheaval, a huge crisis that our civilization is pushing us through. As we all move from that long history of mankind where everything was real, could be touched and passed on physically, to a new history in which everything is turning virtual, ephemeral, where less and less things are tangible, real, and existing. Where we are all confronted with an onslaught of a million things at the same time. While even our so-called friends, become fictitious and become data. We all together move into the digital age. And in that process, we have to leave a lot behind, a lot of luggage that is dear to us. But this process is irreversible. And our future depends on how we adapt, what we take along from the past, and how we actually take it. We're doing all that as Europeans. Europe has conditioned us as much as our local, regional, or national inheritance. The younger we are, I guess, the more we're already used to Europe, and at the same time familiar with the digital age. But also, the younger you are, the more future you need. I'm a visual person, and I want to ask you to follow me and visualize my chain of thought with me. I warned you, you have to work. in front of my inner eye, I see it as a great privilege to reflect about Europe and the future from this city here, from Lisbon. Why? It makes me actually see what Archimedes meant when he said, "Give me a place to stand, and with a lever I can move the world." Now, I'm not saying we're outside of Europe here in Lisbon, of course not. But we're so much on the edge, on this westernmost point of our continent, that we can just pretend, visually, all of us, to have enough leverage to lift that whole continent up, symbolically at least, so it shakes, rattles, and rolls a little bit for a moment, so we can almost look at it from a certain distance, raised up so we can see it with fresh eyes. There it is. Actually, yep, east is right where the door is. There it is, Europe. What we wanted it to be, what it is now, and what it could be. Please, all of you, keep pulling that lever so it stays up and we can examine it. For so long, the Portuguese turned their back on Europe and stared out over the oceans and dreamt themselves to Asia and Africa and the Americas. But now their gaze is firmly set on this continent, which is just spread out in front of us now. Yes, keep it up there. Keep the lever on. From Spain, we look over to France, to Italy, to Germany, and to its outer boundaries, further in the east, to the north, all the way down to the south. Are you holding that lever? Keep the whole Europe up in the air, please. What do you see? I see a paradise where lots of people from all over our planet would love to be. What I dreamt of and fantasized when I was a little boy growing up in the rubbles of the big war in my country. But I also see trouble in paradise. A continent that is actually shaking in confusion. Shameless and unabashed voices everywhere that shout loudly, "Hey people, let's go back and return to the good old times. Let's reinstall our borders. Yes, let's have them back. Let's exclude others so we can be by ourselves again as a glorious nation, cozy on our own, among ourselves, our nationals, with our own national future in our own hands." All the time, these Pied Pipers all over the place conceal or try to make us forget that the good old times they invoke or implore were full of wars, despair, unrest, instability, and hostility. Why are they so bloody successful? Because so many people are afraid. They're in the middle of that crisis that we talked about, where they can't touch things anymore, and they want something tangible again, want to hold on to something that they know, because it's all slipping through their fingers, so they doubt their future. They're mistaking Europe for the source of the problem, and they think that ideas from the past will bring the past back. But these ideas won't bring it back. They can't. These people cling to a past that will keep them locked in the past. All those cozy nationalist dreams will have their bitter awakenings of being left behind, of being isolated, of having lost all protection, and finally, of having no more roof over them, literally, from the upcoming storms of global changes. Europe, as you all know, is not the problem, it's the solution. It is a mighty protective roof, and this is my favorite image of it, and a solid structure. But it can only cover those under its roof, not just those standing next to it. It can protect languages, traditions, regions, minorities, cultures, local industries, better than any encapsulated, sealed-off small national entities that will implode, be blown away, or have their people remain isolated within. Please keep pulling that lever so we don't want to lose sight of Europe. I look this way, where it's all out, where it is. Get your act together, Spaniards and Catalans, and talk. Call on Europe to help you solving your conflict. Why did Europe keep out of it? I never got that. Together we have developed an excellent culture of dialogue and peace. Get your act together, Hungarians or Polish or Austrians or Czech. You will not survive as what you dream of being or becoming if you don't stay under the mighty shield of Europe and if you do not agree to carry this roof together with us all. And get your act together, Brussels, Berlin, Paris, and do not let those nationalists ruin our common house, this wonderful palace, without trying everything to tell the people of Europe what they are about to put at risk and lose, and why. Brussels, Berlin, Paris, did you really do everything in the book to let the English people know what was at stake for them? Did you really do everything you could to let their young people know clearly that not voting for Europe was gambling their future away? Did we really woo them? Court them? Shouldn't we still be doing this? Even more so? Why do they all now wake up to the nightmare of being misguided and misinformed by those Pied Pipers that pulled the carpet from under the feet of a whole generation and stole their future with lies and make-believe? Are we really going to let them all down, saying, it's your fault, it's your own fault? If we believe in Europe, like we do, did we get involved enough? Are we battling for it with all our might? Did we actually fight for getting the English back? Or are we just crossing our arms, explaining them, well, now it's too late. Now you have to pay the price for it. If Europe is suffering today, maybe we didn't fight enough for it. What is our best weapon in that struggle? What is our most convincing tool our best argument? What is our armor? No, it's not finances. It's not banks. It's not commerce. It's not industry. It was a big mistake that we kept Europe based on that for too long. We allowed it to be a dry financial entity most of the time. That was not solid ground enough. That did not give Europe a soul, an emotional core, so that its people now turn back to the past believing to find it there. But what does keep our roof up in the future? Please keep all pulling that lever. I still want to see it. We need to see it suspended. What does keep our roof up in the future? The only possible answer is our very best, our common heritage for which we are all here tonight. What is stored in our common culture as well as in all our different ones all over the place. That precious immaterial stuff, the sum of all our thinkers and composers, painters, potters, poets and priests, writers, musicians, architects, historians and scientists, great, strong women among all of them, actors, directors, theologians, comedians, doctors, inventors, teachers, our heritage, the Renaissance, the Reformation, the French Revolution, human rights, resistance, unions, and yes, wars as well, because we overcame them. We developed a uniquely peaceful culture of talking together. We learned to see each other as partners, as neighbors, brothers, and friends. All of that is easily wiped away by the onslaught of the global storm coming up called "Make Everything the Same." What we can oppose to that is the most precious, gentle, yet powerful wind in nature as well as in culture, the wind that is called diversity. Only Europe, our common house, can protect us from the coming hurricane and expose us to our own wind and weather. Only Europe is able to protect, save, restore, preserve, and nourish our complete heritage under its roof. You know, I'm here speaking and acting for the culture of the moving image, the one that compacts, comprises, includes, and stores the most of all that we are as social, emotional, intellectual beings. Teaching this visual culture that is specific to our national industries and identities, as well as for a European identity, in schools already, that is of paramount importance for the future of Europe. And Silvia, I was so happy that you started it in Italy. Yes, there is another kind of past that will propel us into the future and that will not block us from it. A Europe without a positive image of itself, its history and its achievements, without a European dream, will implode. And don't underestimate this. America was built on a dream that was a sheer fabrication of images and of cinema most of all. We have to teach this precious heritage and this culture of the moving image in schools early on, so future generations of Europeans are better prepared for appreciating who we are and what we have in each other. But we can only teach it and pass it on, take it with us into the future, and let our future be informed by it if we make it pass, if we make it transition, pass over into the digital age. That is inevitable. Our movies, all of ours, mine too, our movies on negatives and print don't exist anymore. They're dead and gone. They only exist if they're available on virtual platforms, if they were transformed, restored, and preserved so they're fit for the digital age. For instance, I owned all my films. I loved them like kids. In the end, I had too many. But I realized my ownership was useless. It was even a problem. If I really loved them, I needed to let go of them so they could grow up and exist on their own. The ideal form for that was a foundation that allowed them to belong to themselves. Not to any company, not to me, to nobody. They belong to themselves, and thereby they from now on belong to a collective memory. Now already 18 of them are digitized and like new. And all their income, everything they generate feeds back into their restoration and into the formation of a next generation of inventive filmmakers. Our heritage, in its diversity, that is the true backbone of a future Europe. And that includes all our regional cultures and tastes and languages and accents, our music, our poetry, our architecture, our theater, and very much so our true common language called cinema. That does exist, European cinema. Wherever it is nurtured and cultivated and now digitized, it persists strongly and builds communion, understanding, and good neighbors. Where it's left to its own devices and neglected, it falls prey to the empty language of that anonymous global cinema. And you know I'm not referring to African, Asian, Australian, or South American. I refer to the other big A. That cinema will always be there anyway, and powerfully so. It will always continue trying to push aside everything else. Whether we will have something powerful to oppose to it that nurtures our own ideas of self and of values, that is what Europeans have to determine now or never. I don't know what made me say all this. I guess it was the spirit of Helena Vaz da Silva. A great European from a small country maybe, but with a lot of leverage. Thank you.